Hello, hello. Hey everybody, welcome on a Saturday morning. Really glad to have you all here for this awesome interview with Open Listings and Alexis Ohanian. I'm Josh Baer, welcome to Capital Factory. Who's here at Capital Factory for the first time? A bunch of you, awesome. Well, glad you could make it. Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs here in Austin. Can we kill the music too? I think I hear the music still going. And we have 3 floors in this building, about 60,000 square feet, where 2,500 entrepreneurs work all year. I think I turned it up. We're going to turn it down, and we have great music here. But we have lots of events like this. This is a very special one. It's pretty awesome. But every day there's different programs and events going on that bring together entrepreneurs and programmers. And so pretty much everything geeky on meetup.com is happening here, as well as lots of other hackathons and events and things like that. When you get serious about your startup, you can get a membership and you can work here. And the reason you want to work here is not actually because that's an awesome desk or office, but because of the people that are here, because everybody else here is working on startups and tech, and because we have a mentor network of about 200 local CEOs and founders who have all built companies before and then had success. A lot of them are angel investors, and if you work here, you can see a calendar where every day you can go grab spots to go meet with them and see if they can help you out. We're also investors ourselves. We're the most active investor in Texas since 2012. And so we invest in a lot of the companies that we meet here, and then our mentors start. So I'm really excited to have Open Listings. They're launching here in Austin, and so that's part of why they're here today. And Austin's a great place for businesses to launch and when they're looking to grow. So we love being part of helping that. And it's also really special to have Alexis here. The last time that I know of that he was here was in 2013. We only had 1 floor, the top floor. We didn't have any of this space, and I was out of town, so I totally missed it. And I was really bummed that I didn't get to meet him. So I'm really glad that I can be here today as he's here too, and also really excited to learn about Open Listings. So thank you all for coming, and I'm going to hand it off. Here we go.
Thank you so much, Josh. Super excited to be here. Okay, so I'll give myself a quick intro. Hi guys, I'm Angeline. I head up the marketing team over at Open Listings, and we're super excited to be here. We just launched in Austin about a month ago or so. Today, sure, why not? Yay, we're here. Exactly. But we're super excited to be here and to have this conversation. So thank you so much to Capital Factory and the Initialized Capital folks for coming out. And let me go ahead and introduce everybody. So I don't know if he needs much introduction in his own building, but Josh Baer, it helps people quit their jobs and become entrepreneurs. He's the founder of Capital Factory, a co-working community and mentorship-based accelerator designed to help startups find their first investors, customers, and employees. Josh founded his first startup in 1996 in his college dorm at Carnegie Mellon, and now teaches classes at UT for student entrepreneurs as well. And the guy in the middle here is Alexis Ohanian. He's a prolific early stage investor and the co-founder of Initialized Capital. He's also the co-founder of Reddit, the 4th largest website in the US, which was funded by Y Combinator in 2005 and acquired by Condé Nast in 2006. He returned in 2014 to lead a turnaround of the now independent company and currently sits on its board of directors. And Alexis is also the author of the best-selling book, Without Their Permission. And then on the end, we have Judd Schoenholtz, the co-founder and CEO of Open Listings, an all-in-one home buying app that came out of Y Combinator in 2015 and has helped homebuyers purchase nearly $1 billion worth of homes since. Judd and his wife bought their home in 2011, and he's been singularly obsessed with fixing the home buying process ever since. Before founding Open Listings, he was the group director of user experience at Huge, where he spent 10 years building an unrivaled global digital agency and designing products for Dell, IKEA, Target, Google, and ironically, the National Association of Realtors. Yeah, and so now, I don't know if they've got a Target on your back, but we'll talk more about that later. So since we're in Austin, I wanted to start the conversation off just talking about what it's like to be in a thriving tech scene outside of the Bay Area. So I'm curious, Alexis, you're one of the most active early stage investors in Silicon Valley. Have you made any investments in Texas companies, and what excites you about companies beyond the Bay Area?
So I'm proud of the fact that I try to spend as little time in the Bay Area as possible. I do about 100 days, I'd say a year. We've actually had to count them up. And about a third of our portfolio at Initialized is outside of the Bay Area. And it turns out Own Local, which is an investment of mine, was actually like first homed here at Capital Factory before they outgrew it. So congrats to Lloyd and the rest of the team. I think one of the real changes we're seeing happen now with the 100 days or so that I do spend in the Bay Area is, that city has become prohibitively expensive to live in, let alone get a home in. And so we're seeing more and more startups basically decide that it's not worth coming to San Francisco and looking to other markets, and they're going to continue to thrive elsewhere in this country until SF gets its business together. And so that's to the benefit of what is it? I like how in Texas y'all refer to yourselves as the 10th largest country in the world. And I think that's the absolutely right mindset. Because with that much economic opportunity in one state, you really should be thinking about yourselves that way. And as far as I can see, Capital Factory is just going to run away with this in this state, which is great, because this is what it takes to get people to realize that the money should be flowing here to support startups and entrepreneurs, and it's cool to see. So I know I'll be making more trips. It's been 5 years since I spoke here, but I find myself in Austin at least once a year, and I try to avoid coming during South by now, because this town is a lot more fun when all of us out-of-towners aren't here.
True. So Josh, you're one of the most active early stage investors in Texas. I'm curious what's different about raising money and attracting or competing for talent here as more and more of these Bay Area tech companies are moving in and the startups are growing.
Sure. I think it is really different raising money here than in the Valley. Although I think at some level, I've been pretty fortunate to travel to a lot of other startup communities. I think it's really just, there's the Bay Area and then everywhere else. And Austin's pretty much like most of those other places where you really, more is expected of you. There's a lot more capital available in the Valley, which means more companies get funded, and it's often can be easier to get funded. But it's still also really competitive there. And so here, I think you're going to be more likely to need to show some real traction. People are looking, they want to really understand what the business is and see that something's really working. And when you talk to investors, one of the things I've learned from talking to other investors in the Valley as well is if you're in the Valley, when you're pitching investors, there are so many of them that they're more specialized, and you should be pitching one who really knows your business. And so you don't have to necessarily take the time to explain the market and the business, but really you have to pitch the big vision. And in Austin, you're more likely to be pitching to a more generalist investor who invests in lots of different things. And so you end up having to spend a lot more time really convincing them that your business is a real business. Like, here's what it is, and here's how it's going to grow and what it's going to become. So I think the way that you talk to them is different. And there's pros and cons to this, but in the Silicon Valley mentality, from what I've seen, a big part of it is pitching how big this can be. And at the early stages in Texas and other markets, you really have to pitch a little bit more of like, no, I'm not going to lose your money. This thing's going to work. Like I've got some real traction. I've got something here. And they have to, there's a little bit of a different mentality around it.
So this question is for you again and Judd. I'm curious what you guys see as the pros and cons of building a startup outside of the Bay Area.
I think a couple of things were mentioned, but one thing I was thinking about while you guys are talking is also if you start a company in the Bay Area, especially if, depending on the type of company, you may end up targeting a certain type of user, and San Francisco has its own type of adoption, for better or worse. And so one of the reasons we moved to Los Angeles being like a home buying service is that we wanted to get outside of this hyper-specific San Francisco insane market and build something that was more generalizable for the rest of the country. So LA, like Austin, has all sorts of different markets, different types of people buying homes, different types of market dynamics. So I think it was really important for us to just get something that could be more broadly adapted from the beginning and didn't build a service that was so hyper-focused on San Francisco users, San Francisco mentality. So that was a big thing that we had thought about. The downside, losing access to some capital, but obviously you can fly up to San Francisco if your business is doing well, you're able to raise capital no matter what. But really, it being more broadly. And then I think the second thing would be access to talent. It seems like there's a ton of engineers, larger companies here to hire from. Same in LA, maybe less of a tech ecosystem, but still a lot of large businesses. Less competition for tech workers. People aren't recruiting our engineers away every day. So that's been a huge advantage for us as we've grown.
I think you totally nailed it. Just to maybe paraphrase it, but those would be the three things I would say as well. It's when you build a business here, this is the rest of America. This is the real world, like all of Texas. These markets, like this is what the world's like. And so if you test it here and it works, it's much, I think, more likely to be a case study of what might work in other places. Talent is the number one thing. I think that's what drives almost every company because that's the most important thing you need is you need the people that are going to go build your business. And if you can't find them, you're dead in the water. If you have the right people, you can raise money. If you have the right people, you can solve all kinds of problems. And I think talent is Texas's biggest advantage. And the way that you know that from the facts is that we have 4 of the fastest growing cities in the country here. And the people that are moving here are not just anybody. They're actually very highly educated, entrepreneurial people here. A lot of them moving from Silicon Valley or from New York or from other places. And they're coming here and they want to go start new businesses. They want to work hard. They want to be part of these different companies. And then we have a lot of big companies here that are also bringing talent here that we can then go poach from to be part of our startups, right? And so Apple has their largest headquarters outside of Silicon Valley, outside of Cupertino here in Texas, in Austin. And Google, Facebook, lots of other companies have a really big presence here and are growing that we can all tap into. And then probably the last thing, I don't know if you touched on this, but but Alexis did, is cost, right? While Austin isn't as cheap as it was 10 or 20 years ago, it's still one of the most cost-effective places to grow a company. And Indeed, which also happens to be an Austin company, but they are one of the largest. They're the largest job website on the internet, and they did a study of if you're a software engineer, where's the best place to go get a job? And they're looking at your cost of living and what you make. And Austin is the #1 place for a software engineer to go work. And Dallas is actually #3. So Texas comes in really strong for cost of living and what you make, making it a great place for engineers. So if that's what you got to hire, this is a great place to be to go do that.
Yeah, we did a homes near work study just to see how affordable it would be for an engineer in Austin to live near some of the top tech companies. And it's funny because when we did one in the Bay Area, the graph had most of the companies in the red, and there wasn't one company that we could put in the red. So we were like, how do we just less green? Is that the opportunity there? So it was definitely it's really cool to see how affordable it is to live in the city and to live a good life here. So Alexis, this next question is actually for you. You made the transition recently into doing venture capital full time. I'm curious what sparked your decision to kind of focus on initialized capital.
Well, I've been really fortunate in my career. We started Reddit right out of college. Did not know what the hell we were doing. And 16 months later got the chance to be bought for more money than my parents had made their entire lives. And so I thought, of course I want to do this. Fast forward to today, 4th largest site in the US, Reddit is much, much bigger than we ever could have imagined. And so about 3.5 years ago, I got the chance to help turn it around, frankly, after being stagnant for about 5 years. Spent the last 3.5, almost 4 years doing it. Got an amazing team of folks in place now, execs who believed in the vision before anybody else did in town. Who really took a chance on us. Zubair, Caitlin, shout out Nick, Alex, Kevin, amazing, amazing leaders who are now part of an exec team at a company that's got 400 employees. And my day-to-day life was a lot different. And then I went on parental leave. I had a baby. Yay. I got married. And it was awesome. And I hope you're applauding for the parental leave part. Because it's really, 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 really important that we change the perceptions and the attitudes on that. I'm really proud of the fact that we have such a great policy. Caitlin, who I mentioned earlier, built an amazing policy at Reddit around parental leave. And it's important the dudes take it too, because it really helps, I think, change the tone. I'm not even answering your question now, but it helps it helps change the narrative around taking the leave, because the founders, the execs, the people, especially the men in the office, need to show that it's okay to go take this time to invest in family and know that their job's going to be there when they come back. And I think it's important in building this equality with women. So what I did while I was on leave was, among other things, realize there's a huge opportunity right now in tech to take the experience I have as a founder of $1 billion company and help other founders build dozens of massive, massive businesses that hopefully do good things for the world. And I wanted to be able to scale that. And being an investor lets me scale that. I'm still on the board at Reddit, and I know that company's still going to be very successful and do great things. But I feel like I can spend the next decade of my life helping grow many more companies that are even more successful and better and bigger. And that's a good way to spend my time.
Awesome. So building on that question, this is for you and Josh as well, is what do you guys find, like, why is now an interesting time to be in venture capital, and what are you most excited about?
Okay, the last time I felt like a new internet was being created, I was a teenager in my parents' house and I couldn't really do much about it. Now I have experience, I have network, I have a platform, and I have access to capital, and I feel like it would be selfish and lazy of me to not try to use that to help shape this new internet as much as possible. And some of this is the blockchain stuff that I know is really hot now, and most of it's buzzword nonsense. But there are some really core technologies being built underneath there that could potentially help us build a new, better internet. And I also just think we're now at a point where technology is where the internet has become so ubiquitous in so many of our lives. We're all carrying these great little computers on us at all times, that we need to do a lot in the next 10 years to make sure that this change, this huge shift doesn't just affect those of us who are the most connected and already the most privileged, but like as many people as possible, both in the United States and globally. So I want to try to help that.
Yeah, I think I had a similar kind of thought. I remember back when I started my first company, I was in my college dorm room. It was the mid-90s. It was the first .com boom, and having this feeling like, wow, the internet's like being created all around me. Many of you here have seen Bob Metcalf, who's here in Austin, who invented Ethernet. And so when I say that in front of him, he's like, the internet wasn't just created. We created it like 20 years before then, right? But it felt like it was. The commercial internet was just being created. And I felt like I could do anything. And as a college student even, I felt like, wow, I can be an expert in anything, because this all just got invented like in the past year. So I can go, learn about it and know as much about it as anybody else. But interestingly enough, it feels the same right now. Like there's still, every day, there's so much new being created, and the internet is evolving in so many different ways. And blockchain being a great example of that, of potentially a whole new kind of metaphor and platform that really could have dramatic changes to our everyday lives, not just the internet and computers. And so I think it's an incredible time to be investing. I think entrepreneurs are smarter and more experienced than they ever have been before. They have access to so much great information, things like Y Combinator's startup school online, and so many different accelerators and resources to go help you. And there's the process, like creating a startup is now on the internet. I don't know if that makes sense. Like when I started my company, you couldn't find like a list of all the angel investors, right? Like that didn't exist. That wasn't on the internet. Now, like everything you need to know to be a startup is also on the internet too. And so it's kind of feeding on itself. And I think that makes it really exciting.
Or at least this notion of a social network around home buying. Can you talk about how you sorted out that you actually really just wanted to get a real estate license?
Well, maybe that's a lesson more about like just listening to users, because we had built an app and you could find homes and you could shop, and we thought it was like beautiful and elegant. We were just building different stuff, but when we talked to people, they were like, why can't you just like buy the homes with this? We like love using this thing. Why can't I just hit the buy button? And so as much as we like to pretend that we like figured out this idea of bringing home buying online, it actually like was just our customer's idea. So maybe more to answer your question too, just like execution, just like building stuff. We were just building everything. Even to this day, we throw tons of stuff at the wall, build features, platform, test, learn, talk to as many users as possible. So the good founding team is just one that can just like execute. And I think maybe even though like our product was underformed, we had no users, I think maybe our earliest investors could see like, oh, these guys actually could build stuff. So I'll give them 2 years worth of money to like, hopefully they'll figure it out. And then it took like 1.5 years for us to figure it out. That's kind of just how it went down.
I think I'm not the first one to say this, but great founders that I see are more obsessed with the problem than the solution. So they're really focused on what the problem they're trying to solve, and not so convinced that they got everything figured out and that it's right. And so I was reading actually a comment, Alexis, that you had made about you have to stay really humble until you start to make some money. It was something along those lines. It may have been from the last time that you were here. I was like reading some stuff this morning. I think along those lines, it's like, you really, the great entrepreneurs that I meet, it's not that they think they're so smart and they've got all the answers and they figured everything out. It's that they're just tenacious about figuring it out, and that they're gonna figure it out. And they are receptive to challenges, to feedback, to new information, so that they're learning all the time. And I find a lot of less experienced entrepreneurs come thinking that their job is to know everything, and that to convince me to invest, that they need to convince me that they've got it all figured out. And honestly, you're never going to look smart doing that. You're actually going to look naive. And so I think that's one trait. It's just this being really receptive, being open to feedback, being open to learning, and feeling like they're learning all the time, not that they've already got it all figured out.
Cool. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you guys see early startup founders making? Judd, what did you guys?
Biggest one. I don't want to just restate what y'all just said because it's a very good point, but it's the founders who are, you feel like you're having, it's like Groundhog Day whenever you meet with them, because let's say a few weeks have gone by or even a couple months and you're having the exact same conversation that you had a few weeks earlier, a few months earlier. And the reason you're having the same conversation is because they haven't really adapted their tactics and tried new things. Like, look, most of the stuff you're gonna try is gonna fail. Like, that's okay, that's expected. And no one's gonna care about your startup except for maybe your mom when you launch it. And that's okay too, because moms are awesome and that's what they're there for. But like, you're gonna have to convince your best friends to even give a damn about your website. And that's normal, that's good. And you're gonna have to encounter that failure and then adapt to change up your tactics and figure out whether or not, what is actually working out of the things you've tried. And if nothing's working, that's okay. Just to ship something new, and this is where the execution part really matters. Because it's the founders who so often struggle early stage never get out of this rut where they just keep banging their head against the wall, trying essentially the same thing over and over again, and without a flexibility and willingness to adapt and basically just ship something new. And it's hard because I sympathize, because so much of our education system is built up not around entrepreneurship and embracing failure. So much of our education system is built up around like understanding the syllabus and getting all the answers right for the test that is coming up. And there's no test, there's no syllabus, it's the market. The market doesn't give you a cheat sheet. You can't go to the market after the exam and ask for a better grade, which incidentally, I didn't know you could do in college until very recently. Really? Like, that's a thing?
I teach a class, they do that.
Who does? Are you kidding? Like, am I that old? Maybe I was just out of the loop. I don't know, but yeah, apparently you can negotiate those things. Anyway, the point is, and so yes, we're all kind of handicapped in this way because education doesn't really prepare us for entrepreneurship. But the sooner you can get better at failing and learning from it and shipping something new, the better.
One thing that I see a lot is that entrepreneurs get confused about what the goal is and the metric of success, and they think early on the metric of success is getting a high valuation. And it's counterintuitive, but in general, you can't take any comment to too much of an extreme, but as a general thought, you want to really value a high valuation at the end, but actually there's a lot of advantages to you as a founder and as a company to keeping your valuation lower at the beginning. Not that you're trying to get too low, but the race is not to just make it as high as you can. Because making your valuation too high, too early, actually reduces your optionality. It reduces the options you have for steps you can take to go next. And it sets you up on a path where if everything does not go perfect, it blows up. And you'll end up disappointing your early investors and disappointing yourself and it not really working the way you wanted. Whereas if you had kept yourself at a more reasonable valuation, it gives you a lot more options on how you finance the company moving forward, how you grow, and other things like that. And so, again, it's not like you're trying to make your valuation low, that's not the point. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs think that like their goal is just drive it up as fast as they can, and getting maybe an inexperienced or less sophisticated investor to agree to a higher valuation actually can put you in a really bad spot. And so again, just kind of this reminder, the goal is to have a really big valuation at the end. That's really important. Along the way, you can build a great company actually by keeping it more moderate, and that gives you lots of options and things you can do as you're growing, because like Alexis said, it doesn't usually all work perfectly. Like, even when it feels like it's working perfectly, like you're probably going to hit a hiccup or a bump. And keeping your valuation at a reasonable level gives you options on how to handle those bumps.
Cool, thank you. So, this next question is actually for you, Judd. So you guys came out of YC and probably had an opportunity to talk to a lot of investors out of that. And I just wanted to ask, what made you guys decide to take funding from Initialized? And should you, do you take the money that's coming at you, or have you turned money down, and what that dynamic is like?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on your business, and you really have to be maybe honest with yourself about, if you have optionality and who you can take money from, because I mean, one of your jobs as a founder is just not to run out of money, so not to do anything like too terrible or immoral or take money from terrible people, but hopefully you have some optionality. I think for us, like, vibes are really important and just like normal, relatable people. So there's a lot of like brand names in fundraising. There's a lot of people with certain experience who maybe aren't going to be as involved or aren't actually cool to work with. So I think for us, we were fortunate enough to have a little bit of optionality. Like hanging out with these guys, they were supportive without maybe being too specific about what they expected or what they wanted or what they thought we should be doing. So that was like one of the easiest choices in the world. I'd say like when somebody joins your board, which we had happen during our Series A, that's like a totally different decision because this is somebody you're like literally marrying for. Or no, somebody gave me a different analogy. It's like they're actually moving into your house. So it's like they're really living with you. So that we didn't think a lot about, and like fortunately chose somebody who's pretty awesome. This guy Ilya Sukar, who is on our board. But like that was a decision. Oh, he's on our board. No big deal. Like he'll vote on stuff. He'll come to these board meetings. Like what are those gonna be like? Turns out it's actually super important, especially if like you disagree or you actually need support or you're gonna lose control of the board at your next round. So. I don't know, we just kind of went through it a little naively and just like hung out with people, try to spend as much time with people as possible, don't just like take a term sheet and hope it works out for the best. I think the other thing is you don't realize actually as a startup founder who is somebody trying to give you money, you actually have a lot more power and leverage than you think. So not that you should like be a dick or try to use that leverage, but I think take your time, make a decision over a couple weeks. I remember in the early days you get this term sheet, somebody wants to give you money, it's literally the most flattering thing in the world, so you feel like you have to say yes right away and send a thank you bouquet or something, which maybe we did, but I think it's a good way to start it off, but I think take your time to make the decision, even if it feels like something's going to blow up or go away, it's most likely not, and if you have one person who's going to say yes to give you money, there's probably 10 other people if you spend time on it, so just be like deliberate and don't work with dicks.
Very nice. Just add on to that too, I think another thing a lot of first-time entrepreneurs don't realize is that you need to interview them as much as they're interviewing you. And it doesn't make you look bad. It's not insulting to them. In fact, they'll probably want you more if you don't just fawn over them, but actually, ask thoughtful questions. And so I was just talking to another founder that was asking me about, they're starting to go raise money, and I just, the advice I gave them was, well, for every question they ask you, ask them a question. Think of it that way. And go just like you reference check an employee, like you want to go talk to CEOs that they've backed. And find a company that didn't work that well, and go talk to that CEO, and find out what it was like on the board when things weren't working that well, and were they great to have on the board, and they were super supportive and helpful, and even though it didn't work, like they tried, they were a good process, or did that turn out to be terrible? Because when everything's working great, it's easy for everybody to get along, and for everybody to nod their heads and smile and be friends, right? But you want to know, especially if they're on the board, especially if they're moving into your house, you want to know what's it going to be like because not everything's going to go right when things don't go right. And you can do that. You can interview that. You can go talk to people. You can talk to people they introduce you to. You can also just go look at their portfolio list and figure out who are their CEOs and try to find someone and contact them directly. And that's not going to make you look bad. That's going to make you look smart.
That advice around interviewing them is also the advice I just gave if you're like interviewing for a job or a role or a co-founder. That's always what I say. I think it's both really important to be like interviewing back and making sure it's right, but also just I think puts people in a different type of mentality, and now you're not, getting yelled at or asked all these questions, but actually you're trying to make the decision if it's right for you, whether it's a job or a funder. So that's always my default advice for somebody who's applying for a job, and I think it puts people at ease. So if you ever go to a job interview or see somebody's going to one, tell them that and let them going better.
So I have one more question for you guys before we open up to audience Q&A. It's actually a question that came from someone via Twitter for Alexis and Josh. They asked about whether there were companies you chose not to invest in that became successes, and if so, what did you learn from those missed opportunities?
No, I've never missed. Ever. There's been a ton. The earliest one was a company called FanDuel, and I had invested in a precursor to them. That was the first time I'd ever seen same day fantasy, and it was it was just like, it was a no-brainer for me that first time, because I hate fantasy because I have such strong football allegiances. I can't, this is getting me into trouble in Texas, I could never have another NFC East player on my fantasy roster, because I grew up in the DC area, but that handicapped me every season. So when I heard this idea of like same day, I was like, oh, okay, this is brilliant, this can work. That company never shipped. They got a first version out, never iterated on it, unfortunately. And so I got pitched by these two, I think they're both English, they might be Scottish, I cannot remember. But like two dudes who even themselves said, we don't really know anything about American football, but we think there's an opportunity here, and we've spent a bunch of time going all over the country to like fantasy football conventions and like learning everything we can, et cetera, et cetera. And in hindsight, this was exactly the kind of moxie and grit and everything that I could have been looking for in founders. But I'd been so burned by the last startup that I just thought, this space isn't gonna happen. There was still a chance maybe that regulators would get in the way and crush it before it even got started. And I just missed out. And you know, that was a good lesson in sort of having a short memory when it comes to previous screw-ups and mistakes. And then another huge whiff was Twitch. And Justin and Emmett actually went through Y Combinator with me. Like, we were friends. We helped, I created the logo for Justin TV, the original little blue gorilla dude. And the reason I didn't invest in them was because I didn't want to invest in my friend's company, because I thought it would weird out the dynamic between us if we were going out and like, if we were out drinking, and I was like, geez, Justin, should you really be drinking right now? Should you be working? Idiot. I should have known that like actually these are people who I knew really, 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 really well, and they're exactly the kind of people I should be backing because I knew them so well, and I knew that they were hard workers and talented. And so yeah, there's two big mistakes.
So I've got two also. The first one that I you know, chronologically, and that one of the biggest ones was I sold my first company, Skyless, to a company up in New York, and there was a person at that company who was a young 20-something-year-old who was who was COO of the business at the time, so was like super involved in running the business. There were a bunch of some older people that not that much older, but older people that had started the business and were the CEOs and CFO and things like that. But this person was really running the business, and then he left to go start a startup, and I knew him. He was super impressive. He's in Tower Lerman, in New York, and he was this one of the most tenacious people I'd ever met. He was wicked smart. He just worked his ass off, and he's the kind of person that's going to be successful at whatever he goes and does. And he just left to go start a company. There was two signs actually. Him leaving should have been a good sign to me that there was something wrong with that company when the COO, who's so awesome, left to go do something else. But he went and started this company. The company was called Gym Ticket, and it was basically lead gen for gyms to go work out at. And I was like, okay, like that doesn't sound like that great of a business. Like it's, you know, like I just don't see that being that big. Like gyms, like low margins. Like I kind of just didn't get it. And I was pretty early in my investing career, so I hadn't seen a lot of different things, and so I passed. I didn't invest in it, and Gym Ticket, as he learned about marketing for the gyms, he learned about local marketing, and eventually that company pivoted into a company called Yext, which went public last year, and is an awesome company that focuses broadly on helping small businesses do local marketing. How do they, or all kinds of businesses do local marketing on social media? So all the different social channels you need to manage and things like that, and managing all that. And it's a great company, and they've grown it really well. And I got so hung up on the idea that I lost the person. And really, we always invest in people, and that's one of those things that it taught me was that especially early stage, I'm investing in people. And I knew then, and I know now, this person will not fail. Like they are just so tenacious and just and focused and smart, and that they're gonna figure it out. And I should have just bet on the person, and I got so hung up on the idea that I passed. Second one is a slightly different situation. This was, so I was one of the first investors in a company here in Austin called Greenling. Anyone ever get their groceries from Greenling? Probably none of you know, too. Got a couple out there. Okay, so organic grocery delivery service. This was more than 10 years ago. And back then, like organics food was still actually kind of like new. It was a big trend. I thought it was going to be a big trend. It is. There was no Instacart. There was no delivery. So it was both delivery and organic, which turned out to be, they really should have picked one or the other, really. But that's what they were doing. So it was food delivery and it was organic grocery delivery. And I was on board of that company. I was involved in it for quite a while. Mason was a great entrepreneur. He worked his ass off for it. He was way too early and trying to do two things at once, and so it ended up ultimately not working. And as it was not working, and he was doing everything he could to make it work. Like, I really believe that. He had a ton of his own personal money in it. He had his parents' money into it. Like, he was doing, I believe he was doing everything he could to save the company and make it work, but it was destined not to go. And while he was doing that, as he really saw that it just wasn't happening, he started another company called Veggie Noodle. Who's tried Veggie Noodles? Any of you guys? You're sheepishly holding your hands up. I see a bunch of hands going. So Veggie Noodles, which is basically creating pasta out of vegetables, out of butternut squash.
Carb-free?
All kinds of things. Yep, carb-free.
Carb-free pasta?
So building on what he learned,
Let's get some.
but moving into like more of a consumer packaged goods, CPG, where he's going to go sell it through grocery stores and things like that. And it's something like he was the perfect guy to do. He's a food guy, he was into organic food, he understood the whole market, he'd been doing it for 10 years, and he saw this product opportunity and he launched it. And he was getting great initial feedback and traction. And I just couldn't get my head around investing in his new company while the old company was dying that I was on the board of and trying to go help. And so I passed on that one. And that company has done extremely well and is off to the races and booming. And then I literally go open my refrigerator and there's Veggie Noodles in there that my wife bought, not knowing anything about it being any connection or anything like that. And that kind of taught me that to really, again, that it's all about people. And now I just, not to get freaked out about that. So we just had another company that's in our accelerator right now, and they have a company in the accelerator that's really interesting, and the founder came to me and he's like, I have this new idea and I'm so excited about it. I'm not going to kill that other thing. I'm going to get some people to run that, but I'm really going to go focus on this new thing. And I really like this founder. That's why we, worked with them to begin with. And the new idea is also really exciting. And so my lesson out of that was, to embrace both, to try to help both go.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I want to open up the floor if you guys have any questions from the audience. Who has a mic? Oh, sweet. Okay, we have a mic, so that makes it even easier. Let's just, actually, it'll be easier. If anybody who has a question wants to just line up here and we can kind of go. We'll start with you. Go ahead.
Hello.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty cool. Thank you all for being here.
Whoa.
My name is James.
We can't lose that mic.
I'm based in Dallas, Texas. But my question is, I just started a marketing agency called Nucleus. It's an experiential marketing agency. As far as presenting my company to startups, maybe even investors, what would be some advice you can give to somebody who has no idea on how to present themselves in a proper way?
Well, this guy can tell you about pitching to startups here in the co-working space. Now, is this experiential marketing company, y'all in the business, and forgive me for not totally knowing, is this, so y'all, if I'm trying to sell widgets, I come to you and I'm like, hey, make the greatest widget event ever at South by, or something like that, okay. I think the first thing you do is you go to your immediate network, and you go to your friends and friends of friends and find out who you're connected to, who has a business in town right now that could use your services, and simply make the case to them. And you might have to, if you're starting out right now, you might have to, do it on a break-even basis or just find a way to get that first customer by any means necessary. But you need that first little bit of momentum of like a proof point that shows the next customer, like, hey, you're legit, you've done a thing before. And the first one is the hardest one to get because no one knows the brand, no one knows the track record. So you've really got to finagle your way through your network to find some startup and do whatever it takes. And just bend over backwards in terms of presenting them ideas and then being willing to execute on them. And start to build that first customer. It's the hardest one to get, but it's the first one that's going to open the door to others because it'll show that you've done it before, you can do it, and build the brand, build the reputation.
Yeah, I think get a case study, like you were saying. Even if you have to do it for free, like go get something that works really well that you're going to be able to point to everyone else and say, I did this for them, I can go do this for you. And then I think the other thing that you're kind of doing by coming here as an example is get out there and talk to as many people as you can, right? And get just network and talk to a lot of people and get feedback and just pitch. Don't be afraid because just because you don't feel ready don't be afraid to try. And try and learn and iterate and try again, and through that, build up your experience, because every time you pitch somebody, you're going to get feedback, and you're going to tweak your pitch a little bit and try the next person.
And then, and also, sorry, one more thing. Know the other competitors in this market. So figure out who all the best event marketing businesses are in Austin, and spend a weekend understanding everything they've done. Like, become an expert on their businesses and the things they've done. Figure out whatever things they're doing wrong that that you're seeing this open field because they're not doing something right, or they have done some creative stuff and you've got a better take on it. But definitely know your competition when you go to those meetings, that you can understand how much, from a pricing standpoint to a service standpoint, all the ways that you're going to do better.
Hey, I'm Calvin. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Josh, for opening this to the public so people like me can come. My question is for everyone. A lot of people are graduating from college today, and I want to ask you, if you could go back in time without the wisdom and knowledge you have, say if you're graduating from college today, what company would you start?
Well, the company I wanted to start out of college, no one ever asked me about, because it died a quick death after about a year, and that's what we turned into Reddit. So it's called My Mobile Menu, in case you're wondering. It was going to let people order food from their cell phones. But it was 2004, and so it was going to be like via text. It was going to send a fax to restaurants. Like, it was bad. So thankfully that didn't work out. So I don't know if there's one particular company. I mean, there's certainly trends right now. There's trends in AI and machine learning. There are trends in blockchain, but don't get starstruck by those. I would look at things that are real problems for you, or industries that you feel like you have some unfair advantage in, or maybe that you're just obsessed with. Because it's got to be something that's going to pass the 4 a.m. test of, like, if you're up at 4 a.m., like, is this a thing you're going to get out of bed for? Because you're going to have to if you want to start a startup. And also, there's no shame in getting a job at a great company like Open Listings, or getting a great job at a company, even one of these sort of more behemoth, larger tech companies that are in the space, because you are going to learn things there, and you can still have your nights and weekends to do what you want. But working in an early stage startup, though, is like a paid education, because you get to interact with the founders, you get to see, like, all the things they do right and the things they do wrong, and they pay you for it. So if you're really into startups and starting something, working in an early stage is a great way to get that paid.
Just to add on to that, not a specific company, but I teach at UT to a student undergraduate entrepreneurship class, and two pieces of advice I give to them quite frequently about being in school. One is that when you're in school, you'll never be in a better place to find co-founders. Like, you're surrounded by unemployed people who are all sorted and categorized by what they know and how good they are, and ranked and scored. Like, you can go find anybody you want. Like, I need a good programmer. Great. Well, here's where they're in that building. So just, you're never going to be in a better spot to build a team, and never going to be a better time to build a company. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, is like, that is target-rich environment. You are surrounded by potential co-founders. And then two, another thing, when I look back to when I was in school, I went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, which is another great computer science school, and we have obviously a great one here at UT. And they had so much interesting stuff going on there, robotics and artificial intelligence and computer vision. And I didn't realize that, like, all the professors doing that really cool stuff, like, they would love it for some young undergrad to come up who was really interested in it, who wanted to help out and be part of it. I kind of felt like it was like they were in some ivory tower or something, and like, oh, they wouldn't want me to come just show up and start asking them questions or something. But actually, they do, and you can. And so find out, like, something awesome that's happening at the university that you can go latch onto, because the interesting thing about professors is they often come up with really interesting research that can become businesses, but they actually aren't entrepreneurs. They don't really want to go start the companies. They need grad students and undergrads and students to go take these things and run with them. And so I'd also be looking around at what really cool things are happening at the university where I could take maybe some research that someone's been doing for 5 years that's now ready to actually become a business, and I can go take that and turn it into a real business.
This is a bummer, but I'm gonna +1 getting a job also. I think for me it was really important just to, like, have a boss who knew less than me. Well, one, you get to choose where you go. You don't have to build it from scratch, which is cool. But you need to, like, not like your job, not want to work, not want to work the hours that you're working. I mean, for me, it was like finally I was just like, fuck this. Whereas I feel like if I had just started a company, maybe I would have given up earlier, would have taken a paycheck. But I think I needed to work for a while to both learn what I was doing, that I didn't know everything, but then also to like sort of value the things that are actually hard about starting a startup, but that maybe you wouldn't value if you saw the other side of the equation.
Yeah, and just pile one more thing too. I think in general, and there are exceptions, like Alexis is probably one of them, but usually you actually have to know a really lot about something to go come up with something really innovative and like build a business in it, right? And so Reddit was brand new, like, I'm not trying, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like it was brand new, right? There's nobody that was an expert at that, right? And so they were pretty young and they were able to come up with something that became a huge business, right? Like Facebook was like that, but those are kind of exceptions. Like most of the time when I see a really badass entrepreneur with a really good idea, they're like an expert at that thing. They know a lot about it. And so getting a job in a space you're really interested in, where you can learn a lot from people, and then really then you might come up with what the really big business idea that would come out of that.
Yeah, like I had worked designing for 10 years and then I had bought a house and I was like, this is nothing like it should be, and why is nobody working on this problem? And it was just like so obvious at the time, having gone through it. But I think if I just decided I want to do that, having not gone through the experience, or I don't know, it would definitely have been a different journey.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Jarzinski, the founder of Kiss and Tell. We're the first global wedding booking platform and actually a Capital Factory portfolio company.
And Alexis just got married.
Yes, exactly. So I have a two-part question actually for Alexis. So the first part is actually, what are some of the pain points that you experienced during your destination wedding planning? I believe it was in New Orleans, correct?
Yes.
And so what were those pain points that you would like to see alleviated by a better digital solution? That's part one. Part two is just more broad. As an investor, what kind of CAC to LTV ratio are you looking for early stage portfolio companies?
Okay. The CAC to LTV definitely matters on the business. I think generally speaking...
Sorry for everybody, that's customer acquisition cost divided by lifetime value. So it's kind of a ratio that you can compare to see how you're acquiring customers.
Yeah, and how effective you are at doing that. Most businesses will start out pretty high, and then eventually you hit this point of like sort of super fans, and then that number starts to go lower and lower and lower, and then you really have to get really smart about how you acquire customers. There are different multiples for different businesses. I think if it's I think if it's a straight up like we sell widgets direct to consumer, you want to see like 5, 6, 7x in terms of a ratio, because you want to know that you're efficiently and fairly cheaply acquiring customers and that they're valuable to you over the lifetime. Maybe these would be like a widget subscription business, but there should be organic growth at the seed stage. It's very, very, very easy to buy your way to growth early on and trick yourself into thinking you found product market fit. And so first and foremost, I want to see organic growth. I want to see so daily active users over monthly active users, or DAU-MAU ratio. If it's like a social network, of at least 30 or 40%. Because you want to know that you not only have people who come and check once a month, but like actually come check daily, where there's a need to be a part of the social network. But again, it really depends on the business. But organic is really important, and I generally tend to, our general advice is to spend as little as possible on acquiring customers certainly with pre-seed funding, but definitely with seed funding. Because that's how you can trick yourself into finding product market, thinking you found product market fit when you haven't. The wedding, actually I'm a terrible use case for this because we had a wedding planner who did all the hard work, so I don't know what things would be better, but I'm really grateful for her because she made us a wonderful wedding. But I'm not your target audience, so I don't know. Sorry.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This question is for Alexis. My name's Lee. I'm starting a service for it's in politics. And by the way, I'm a big fan of your work. I've been a Redditor for like 10 years.
Oh, right on.
For better or worse.
Thank you for Redditing.
And
I'll vote to you, sir.
So there's a lot of people in this room who are entrepreneurs working on growing their communities. They're building social capabilities into their products. And in light of the recent election cycle and the the things that have come to light. I'd like to get your thoughts on how people with small teams should go about avoiding some of the pitfalls that social sites like Reddit and Facebook have fallen into with foreign intervention, I guess.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're talking about the Russians. So we're really fortunate. We published the results of our investigation pretty early on, and I think largely because Reddit is so hard to use, and also because actually we've been the platform from like day one had people trying to game it.
The Russians aren't the first, right?
Well, the Russian actual effect was pretty limited, in large part because I think, like I said, one, they probably had a lot of trouble just using the interface. But two, because we've been fighting against things like ring voting and other things since literally the first year of Reddit. Once Reddit got big enough that people were incentivized, usually marketers, to game the front page algorithm, we started building software to thwart this. Whereas I think for other social networks, it was a feature. If a million bots retweeted a tweet or liked or shared a Facebook post, that was a feature, right? They didn't see it as damage, they saw it as a win because more people were sharing content. But for us, whenever we would detect that, even back in 2005, we would have countermeasures in place. So I think, so far the results of our investigation have shown barely any interference. But that said, I think if you are building a community platform, you don't want to over-optimize for a problem you'll have if and only if you're going to have 1 billion users, because then you're never going to get there because you're spending time solving problems you don't have. But you should be thinking through, I think from an early stage, what we now call, there's like a good cop, bad cop of community management, where we have a separate trust and safety team that is like a faceless, it's just a message from Reddit, a faceless message that in a lot of cases actually just automatically puts people in timeout for a few days to kind of cool off when they're violating a policy. And actually the majority of the time that helps. That solves it the majority of the time.
I've been put there before, by the way.
Okay, well. But it turns out people just get caught up in the moment, and then if you just tell them hey, chill, come back in a day, it usually actually solves the problem for most folks. And then there's a separate community team which is front-facing, which has usernames that like FluffyBunny64, that is more human and more about the sort of community building. They're like the party host. But it's really, really important to set up those as two separate teams. We didn't do that until when we came back about 4 years ago. And so if I could do it all over again and I would build a community site from day zero, I would build those two teams as separate and make them very distinct and have the bad cops be faceless and just sort of the brand and almost kind of robotic in their enforcement. And then the good cops, the community managers, be much more human and much distinctive as people and doing it more like a party host community building.
If you're really interested in that space, there is an awesome, really incredible rising company here in Austin called New Knowledge. They actually won our $100,000 AI challenge we did at the end of last year. And their whole focus is on using AI and natural language processing to detect bots, pumping stuff and promoting it, to be able to tell the difference between something that's a real problem that actual people are talking about versus something that is really effectively a cybersecurity attack at this point. That company's called New Knowledge, and they're doing super well.
Thank you.
Cool, sorry about that. We actually have time for 2 more questions. So you guys will go and then we can wrap up, and I'm sure you guys are happy to answer questions on Twitter and
yes.
They can add
you. Should absolutely be tweeting.
Yes.
I'll respond to all your tweets.
Yeah, right. Alexis will respond. So.
Hey, what's going on, gentlemen? My company is called Casino Table. It's based out of sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, and I actually flew in from Las Vegas last night just for this. I really
right on, man.
really appreciate the time.
Wow. Respect.
So me and my team right now, we're at a very interesting time. That's why I can't really sleep, because we found out what we're going to build for our MVP, and I have one of my former employers telling me, hey, if you build this, we'll buy it. And so now I'm just like, well, shit's getting real. So I called my lawyer and I said, hey, and the problem right now is, I've been fortunate enough to work with my fellow co-founders, and as the only person on the team who does not know how to write a single line of code, I'm very thankful for them because they all became great engineers after our high school journey together. So right now I'm at a point where I would love to compensate them as far as equity, as far as a position, because they're my brothers and they're kind of just the godfathers of my idea. But at the same time, one of my lawyers' concern right now is, hey, maybe they're too young, maybe they don't have the experience to kind of take your product, and even if they can make it, they're not going to be able to manage your team and things like that. So I guess the first question is, how do I exactly address that during this time of just awkwardness? And the second question is it necessary, I guess, to bring all your co-founders under one roof in order to truly execute your idea? Like what you said before, like moving into your house and things like that. So yeah.
How many people are we talking about here?
So 3 other gentlemen.
3 others,
Yeah.
okay. And at this point, would you say they've all, shortest answer.
Right now they're doing their best to not, I guess, because they have contractual, obligations as well with their current company, so they can't do too much work either because they don't want to get sued.
Dig it. Okay, definitely talk to your lawyer. This is, what I'm telling you is not legal advice. It's rare that companies with 4 co-founders last. 3 is the maximum I think we've seen actually work. And I think the question here is, who of these people is willing to go all in? And yes, I think it's really, really, really important and good that you know that your technical team / co-founders are really, really important to success of this business, because your idea is worthless. No offense, everyone's ideas are worthless. And the reason I'm telling everyone to learn how to code all the time is because if you're a creator, you have all the leverage. I think you gotta have a heart-to-heart with this team and say, okay, who wants to join me in this? Figure out 1 or 2 realistically who are, and there's probably 1 or 2 who've already sort of peaked out in the team who are definitely more engaged and more just
There's a hierarchy of things.
yeah. And they're the ones who you want to arm yourself with as co-founders. And it's more than a title, right? There's a whole equity discussion to be had, but you definitely want them to be incentivized. This isn't the kind of thing where you want to give them 1% and be like, cool, you're a co-founder now, because that's going to really misalign you all. And also, for what it's worth, if you want to be building this as a business just to flip to your former employer, that's a different kind of worldview than building a business for 100 years sort of thing. And you should take that into consideration too. And I would generally just avoid trying to do it, even if you actually want to flip it, don't build the business with that mentality, because it will actually make you much less desirable to a future acquirer. So the mentality you should always be using, especially when you're talking to these folks who might want to buy, it was like, no, I'm building this thing for 100 years, like this is going to be an empire, be scared. But you definitely want to flip the script on that and talk to your lawyer.
One of the things I add is just when you grant equity, there's a very common structure that you use called vesting and also a cliff, which basically is one way that it protects you for this. And so you can say, look, I'm going to give you whatever the right number could be, and it could be lots of ranges. I don't know if it's 30% or it's 10% or it's 5% or it's 1% or whatever. I'm going to give you 5% of the company as an equity grant, but it's going to vest over, the typical period is 4 years, which means you're going to earn it like every month over that time. And usually you have a cliff, which basically says, you know what, if this doesn't work out in the first year, you actually don't walk away with anything. You got to stay at least a year to get it, to be part of it. And that lets you show them the vision, like give them the promise of, look, here's how you can be compensated. But it also kind of gives you some protection that if you know what, like a year and a half into it, it doesn't work out and you need to replace them with somebody else, they don't walk away with everything. They get something for what they did, but they don't walk away with everything. And you've got that equity left over to go incentivize somebody else.
Thank you guys.
Yes, always vest, always.
And another interesting point on that a lot of founders don't realize is, unless you are the only sole founder and going to be only the sole owner, your own shares should vest. And it's just the right thing to do for the company and for you. And it's hard for a lot of founders to accept that at the beginning, that oh wait, but I'm starting the company, why should my shares vest? But it's quite common that things change and go in different directions, and that gives you the mechanism for you to be able to leave the company if you have to.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Manley, and I am the CEO, owner, and founder of the Lake Alabaster Box. I'll be 57 years old on Monday, and I want to
Happy birthday!
Right on. Happy early birthday.
I want to thank you for the Capital Factory. I want to thank you for being here as a new husband and father, you'll understand what I have going on. I learned to quit my job and start my own company. Couldn't get anyone to give me a dime. And I'm 100% equity of my company, thanks to you, and what I learned at Capital Factory by coming to South by Southwest. So I'm learning from all of you here, because when I was in school at the University of Southern California, they didn't have a school to teach me what I'm learning from you guys. And I just want to say thank you, because I'm now a dropship vendor at Walmart.com. Never met with anyone, never spoke with anyone on my first try. So I want to thank you for letting me step out, work a job I hated for 2 years, and now I'm here in Austin. But my side hustle is I'm a chauffeur to pay my bills until my company gets where I want it to be. So thank you guys for doing what you're doing, and all of you for inspiring me, and I learn from you every day. So thank you.
Wow.
Awesome. Well, that's a great note to wrap on. You want to say anything else?
I could not have picked a better way to wrap that. So thank you for your last question, and thank you all for coming out on a Saturday afternoon, even though it's beautiful outside. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thank you to Capital Factory, to Alexis and the Initialize team, and Judd. Yeah. Hopefully there's some leftover coffee, or you guys got your fill of breakfast tacos, but enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, thank you. And if you have any content or anything from here, just hashtag Side Hustle Saturday, and we'll be retweeting and posting all of that stuff.
Right on.
Woohoo! Bye guys, thank you.
Y'all didn't get to ask questions. Ask me anything on Twitter.